Okay, Nilang, we're going live in 2 seconds, okay?
Okay.
Hello and welcome to BloombergQuint. Of AZB. Nilang, welcome to BloombergQuint. Your first reaction to what the text of the ordinance says specifically, because through a variety of op-ed pieces and let's say consultations, the industry was trying to weigh upon the finance ministry to not suspend IBC for pre-COVID defaults as well. So to that extent, do you see this as a relief for banks especially?
I think so. I think, as you said, I think the expectation, basis press reports, basis presentations, was that this might be a blanket ban on all IBC applications after a certain date, which would have been much more troublesome for the lenders. So I think from what was expected, what was feared, this is a huge relief, I think, to the industry, the lender industry, certainly.
Sure. So they have said that any defaults that are arising on or after March 25th will not be considered, or IBC applications for those defaults cannot be initiated for a period of 6 months, which is further extendable up to 1 year from a date that will be notified. So for now, for all practical purposes, for the next 6 months, IBC is suspended. And post, the expiration of this period is when the government will take a call whether a further extension is required or not. But the second part to this section 10A, the new section that has been inserted, is more curious, Nilang, because they have said that provided no application shall ever be filed for initiation of corporate insolvency resolution process of a corporate debtor for the said default occurring during the said period. Your first reading of what this proviso really means for corporate debtors and creditors.
Yeah, I have to say, I think we'll have to wait and see how the interpretation develops, especially through through courts when this is tested. But it's a proviso and says it seeks to clarify, and it's in addition to the main section. The main section makes it fairly clear, doesn't it, that for a 6-month period, 25th March onwards, if there's a default in that period, we can't start an IBC. Now, does that mean at the end of the 6-month or 1-year period, you can initiate an IBC for a default in that past period? You would have thought so. Except now for the provision, which says you can never file it, which means technically, therefore, it would mean also the one interpretation could be that for that 1 year, 6 months to 1 year period, you can never file IBC. You can enforce security, you can go to the court, you can get money decrees, but you can never file IBC for any default in that.
No, so it shall ever be filed. What happens after the extension of that 6 months and let's say IBC suspension gets extended to 1 year? What happens after the expiration of this period? Whether this default can then be used to take a corporate debtor to court and initiate insolvency again?
So I suppose there'll be left to interpretation, and I can think of a few arguments. Right? If you haven't paid for the entire, let's say 1 year period, assuming the 6 months is extended. So if you haven't paid any debt during the 1 year period, debt which was due and arose for payment in the 1 year period, you haven't paid for 1 year, or you haven't paid during that period. Could a lender argue that on the first day after the 1 year period, this is a continuing default and in a sense a fresh default on the first day after the 1 year period, and therefore while I couldn't file during the 1 year and I can't file for that 1 year default, this is now actually a continuing default, and in a sense is under my documents a new default on the first day after the 1 year, and I can file for this. I suppose lenders may try and make that argument, but the counter to that is that renders the proviso completely superfluous. What does the proviso mean then? Because anyways, you can't file during the 1 year. If you can file on the first day after 1 year, then what's the point of the proviso? So I think while lenders might try and make that argument, it may be a little too cute.
But okay, how
The earlier part, given that on the day immediately after the 1 year, I think lenders may try that. Let's see how courts react. The counter to that is if, under the RBI moratorium, lenders have given a moratorium anyway and it's been accepted, then in a sense there is no default for scheduled payments during that period. And if there is no default and the moratorium effectively kicks out the date of repayment to after the suspension period, then I suppose the default only occurs after the end of the suspension period for the first time. And then it could be argued by a lender that this is actually not a default during the suspension period. Because of the moratorium, your default has actually occurred for the first time after the suspension, and therefore I'm entitled to file IBC against you for a payment which may have had to be paid on 25th March for 6 months, but was deferred because of the moratorium, and therefore now has to be paid for the first time after suspension.
Okay, actually, before getting to that question, I should have asked you, given that the ordinance itself doesn't make any mention or a change to the definition of default per se, is it a right approach to even sort of sync it with the moratorium timeline that the RBI has prescribed? Because that only extends to financial creditors and NBFCs anyways. So operational creditors and let's say your private equity guys, your unsecured creditors are still out of, let's say, this sort of thing.
No, you're right. That applies only to banks and NBFCs, and therefore, for operational creditors, and so any other creditor outside the bank would not be and have amounts due to them in this period. It looks like they may never be able to file an IBC, or maybe they will be able to. It just depends on how the courts interpret it. So we'll have to wait and see how they get on.
But I mean, where does that debt go? How do you qualify that debt if you can, never ever file an IBC application for that debt? Is the intent then to tell sort of the creditor ecosystem that in respect of this debt, you can't take the corporate debtor to the IBC, but you have other ways of recovering it? Is that the intent?
Correct. I mean, we need to hark back to the IBC and think about what the IBC was for, right? The IBC is not a recovery mechanism. It never was intended to be. The fact that it's used as one is a different matter, but it's not a recovery mechanism. And therefore, you're right. I think there are other means of recovering debt, of enforcing security, enforcing the rights. So certainly those remain. But re-IBC, whether you can file after the suspension or never at all, I think that's the question up for debate now.
Okay, so I don't know if this helps in the sort of
should never be applied. Yeah, I suppose that could be an argument made. But again, as I said, I think we need to head back to really when the default occurs. If a lender, I think as the point you made, if a lender says that I'm giving you a moratorium, I'm giving you a waiver, I'm pushing back your date of repayment by 6 months, 9 months, whatever it is, then can a lender not argue that the default is only occurring now after the end of the suspension? And therefore, I can file IBC because this is not a suspended debt repayment. It is a new debt repayment which you have failed. So I think, one, we'll have to see how courts interpret it. And then we'll have to find or see ways and means on how lenders get away from borrowers who are playing truant. Now, keep in mind that, what are we looking at? Are we worried about a borrower saying, I won't pay you in a 3-year loan for this 1-year period, but I'll pay you every penny thereafter in full. But that 1-year period, do what you want, I'm not going to pay you. I mean, a rational borrower is not going to behave like that with a lender. Having said that, what if there's a lender whose loan was phasing out in 2020? And these are the last 6, 9, 12 months of his loan. Then how does he recover that? Does he not have the IBC for that? I think that's the question. An unsecured creditor, what does he do, right? Because he doesn't really have any other pressure mechanism in terms of enforcement of security. He can go to a court, but that's a little more long-winded. And operational creditors, MSMEs, what do they do for this 12-month period if they're not being paid? I think those are questions which we need answers to.
Because if I understand what you correctly, but now on the March 2021, this is now on the that before we are available and so that was
No, you're right. Which is there, which is available for that. It may not be, as much of a hammer on the head of a borrower as I see, but it certainly is available. So no, I don't think people are losing their debt or it has to be written off, etc., etc. But also keep in mind, you just don't need an RBI moratorium to delay a date of repayment, right? I can give you a waiver under a loan document or under any other document of where you owe me money and say, don't pay me on 25th March 2020, pay me on 26th March 2021. So I can potentially give you a waiver or a default or a delay, even outside of the RBI moratorium structure. Not because I'm a bank or NBFC, but otherwise under contract.
And then we come back to this argument which creditors can state that, oh, now it's a new default and IBC can apply or IBC can be used.
Well, see, remember, let's take a step back and we have to wait and see how the court interpret this in the first place, right? Will the courts interpret this as you can never ever file or as a milder version of it, right? So we have to wait and see how that pans out in the first place. If courts interpret it to say you can never ever file, then, arguably, yeah, you have some creditors whose amounts rose for payment in that 6 to 1 month period, and therefore may not be able to file IBC. So they'll have to find ways and means to get out of that. And, could one way be pushing out the debt repayment date to a date after the end of the suspension? Potential. But again, we'll have to see how courts interpret this.
Okay, all right. I will not, is unclear and the final that amendment that the director of the party will not be put up for fraudulent or appointing or if they anticipated that the agency and about it.
I think it's only fair to not do wrongful trading, i.e. not continue trading if there is no prospect of the company remaining solvent. And therefore they need to mitigate that situation and do everything they can to mitigate that situation. The point being made over here is that for directors in a company which is obviously going strong, the next obvious step for them is to consider going under Section 10 and putting the company into IBC. But if that's not available to them, which no longer is 6 months, maybe a year, then the corollary for them is you're not then liable for wrongful trading, having not done that. Which makes sense.
Okay, all right, Milan, thank you for joining us. And of course, we come back to this and discuss most likely to arise. Thank you for joining us on BloombergQuint, and thank you so much for watching.
Thank you.